Hello and welcome to another edition of Educating Marshmallow. Here she is. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the ironic ending of Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, a text that I've taught many times and that I think is just a masterpiece. So I view the novel as basically a classical tragedy. What does that mean? Well, it means that the hero has to die in order to avert social disaster. There's lots of tragedies that fit this description. For instance, Sophocles' Oedipus Tyrannus, where Oedipus doesn't die, but he wounds himself, he blinds himself and exiles himself because he realizes that he is the cause of the plague that's afflicting Thebes, of which he is the king. And so the play traces the discovery that Oedipus makes that as he pieces together his life in retrospect and realizes, oh no, I did kill my father, that man at the crossroads, and I did wed my mother, Jocasta. So the evil that he embodies through those, very transgressive actions has to be gotten rid of in order for Thebes to recover from the plague. Well, there's a similar movement in Things Fall Apart. But the social disaster is not a plague in this case. It is the prospect of a bloody civil war in Umuofia, the nation that Okonkwo is a part of. And this civil war is called a war of blame by the characters in the novel. In other words, a war where they are fighting each other, basically. So what does that mean exactly? Well, it means that Okonkwo is faced with a divided society. The Christians have come to his own village, in fact, and have made some converts among people who are outcast by the tribe, the Osu, for instance, who are essentially outsiders. They are not supposed to get married. They don't really belong. They're sort of divine property. They're not really part of the community. But the Christians come and they give the Osu a sense of belonging. They accept them in that way. The Christians also don't have some of the tribal prejudices against twins, for example. In the traditional practices of the tribe, the twins would simply be killed because they're a sign that something evil has happened. So Christianity is actually portrayed in a fairly positive light for some of the novel. Achebe himself was raised in a Christian family. And there are two important Christian missionaries in the book. The first is Reverend Brown, who, as his name implies, is kind of like a compromise between Black African traditions and white European traditions. He sort of adapts Christianity to the local religion and, in fact, calls his god Chukwu, which is the name that the tribe has for their most important god. And all he asks is for his converts to believe that there's only one God. Just worship Chukwu, everything's going to be fine. So Mr. Brown, is a positive version of Christianity that is kind of a compromise with some of the native beliefs. However, Reverend Smith comes along and he offers a much more polarizing version of Christianity that comes to be problematic in the tribe because there's a lot of anti-Christian sentiment in the tribe anyway. And Okonkwo is kind of the hero who embodies the sentiment most obviously, even though Okonkwo himself has violated some of the norms of the tribe in his own right. And he's in fact exiled by the tribe for 7 years because he himself has not managed to quite keep with the rules and regulations of his own community. So how does this sort of polarized society manifest itself towards the end of the book? Well, what happens is that there's a controversy surrounding a Christian convert named Enoch, who is supposed to have eaten the sacred python. We don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, Enoch himself is a bit of an agitator. And finally, Okonkwo and the elders of his tribe, who are dressed up as sacred divine figures called the Egwuwu, they burn down the church. And that earns them some time in jail from the authorities. And while they are in jail, they are beaten and humiliated by some of the messengers who took them there in the first place under false pretenses. And these messengers are fellow Africans who have been, basically converted into instruments of the colonialist government. So anyway, after Okonkwo is released, he goes back to his tribe very angry indeed. And he basically wants all-out war to finally purge the tribe of Christianity and all the converts. But he is afraid that they won't do it. And here I'm going to read a few passages from the novel that really take us to the heart of what happens in the final few pages. Okonkwo says, "The greatest obstacle in Umuofia is that coward Igonwane. His sweet tongue can change fire into cold ash. Tomorrow he will tell them that our fathers never fought a war of blame. If they listen to him, I shall leave and plan my own revenge." So we can see that Okonkwo is very pessimistic that his tribe will actually go to war. And again, he shows himself to be an individual who's willing to put aside what the tribe wants and just act on his own, which is another reason why he is problematic. Because he is sort of, he sticks out like a sore thumb in a way in his own community that he nevertheless purports to stand for against Christianity. So anyway, Okonkwo sees, or he thinks he sees anyway, that they're not going to decide to go to war. However, when the tribe is finally convened, it is not Igonwane, the quote-unquote coward, who speaks. It's Okika who gets up and speaks. And he gives a very impassioned pro-war speech. He says, "We who are here this morning have remained true to our fathers, but our brothers have deserted us and joined a stranger to soil their fatherland." He's talking about the converts to Christianity. He goes on, "If we fight the stranger, we shall hit our brothers and perhaps shed the blood of a clansman. But we must do it. Our fathers never dreamed of such a thing. They never killed their brothers, but a white man never came to them. So we must do what our fathers would never have done." So what he is doing here, he's advocating that war of blame that I was talking about, where the blood of the clans, the people, will be killed. It's a civil war in the tribe, and that is frowned upon. That is exactly the kind of crisis of collective violence that Girard was talking about, as the thing that classical tragedies are there to sort of crystallize and then avert, right? That here comes Marshie for the last bit of the lecture. That this threat of collective violence, it's catastrophic to the tribe, a civil war within the tribe, that is coming to fruition, it would seem, in this meeting of the clan, contrary to Okonkwo's expectations. However, what happens? Well, all of a sudden, here come 5 court messengers, the same people who beat and humiliated Okonkwo and some of his fellow elders when they were in jail. Okonkwo catches sight of them. He sprang to his feet as soon as he saw who it was. He confronted the head messenger, trembling with hate, unable to utter a word. And this passage sort of reminds us that Okonkwo is not a man of words, he's a man of actions. In fact, he stammers because he has trouble speaking, and he allows actions and sometimes violence to speak for him. So the head messenger sort of butts into the meeting, and someone asks him, "What do you want here?" Head messenger says, "The white man whose power you know too well has ordered this meeting to stop." In a flash, Okonkwo drew his machete. The messenger crouched to avoid the blow. It was useless. Okonkwo's machete descended twice, and the man's head lay beside his uniformed body. The waiting backcloth jumped into tumultuous life, and the meeting was stopped. Okonkwo stood looking at the dead man. He knew that Umuofia would not go to war. He knew because they had let the other messengers escape. They had broken into tumult instead of action. He discerned fright in that tumult. He heard voices asking, why did he do it? He wiped his machete on the sand and went away. So what's happened here is that Okonkwo, by killing the messenger, the thing you're not supposed to do in any culture really when you get bad news, but in this particular circumstance, by killing the messenger, by acting out violently in a way that is inappropriate and untimely, he has actually averted the war that he himself wanted desperately, the war of blame, the very sort of anti-traditional kind of violence, right, that's within the clan as opposed to outside the clan. But the fact that he couldn't restrain his anger and killed the messenger has sort of alerted his fellow villagers in Umuofia to the fact that this is not a war they actually want to fight after all. So his premature violent action has ironically averted the larger collective violence that he actually wanted, but that Achebe clearly shows is out of line with the traditional cultural norms of how violence is justified. Okay, so this is the huge cosmic irony that we have in the novel, that Okonkwo defeats the very thing he himself wanted to achieve. When his tribe was ready to go to war, he kind of short-circuited that by just getting angry and taking premature, inappropriate action. So what happens after this ironic event? Well, Okonkwo hangs himself. He commits suicide, which is another violation of the tribal norms. What he has done is against all their belief systems, and so his fellow tribesmen can't even touch his body to cut it down from the tree, because his violation of their laws is forbids any contact with him. His body is evil at this point. So once again, Okonkwo has shown, in a way, that he is out of step with his culture's practices and belief systems, that he sees himself as kind of transcending his culture, even though at times he was desperately wanting to fight for it and kill even people within the tribe to preserve what he thought was the tribe's traditions. So this is a very complicated denouement of this novel, and it's masterful. It's even more masterful because Achebe adds on an extra layer of irony that almost needs no commentary. The last paragraph of the novel is worth reading aloud, and I'm going to do that. This is the district commissioner who comes to visit the tribe after Okonkwo's death, and this is how he is described, how his thoughts are described. The commissioner went away, taking 3 or 4 of the soldiers with him. In the many years in which he had toiled to bring civilization, within quotation marks, of course, Western civilization. There's plenty of civilization in the novel, as Achebe has pointed out over and over again. This is a very sophisticated culture that has been described here, but the commissioner knows almost nothing about it. So he thinks he's bringing civilization to a place without civilization. Anyway, he had learned a number of things. One of them was that a district commissioner must never attend to such undignified details as cutting a hanged man down from the tree. Such attention would give the natives a poor opinion of him. In the book that he planned to write, he would stress that point. As he walked back to court, he thought about that book. Every day brought him some new material. The story of this man who had killed a messenger and hanged himself would make interesting reading. One could almost write a whole chapter on him, perhaps not a whole chapter, but a reasonable paragraph. At any rate, there was so much else to include, and one must be firm in cutting out details. He had already chosen the title of the book after much thought: The Pacification of the Primitive Tribes of the Lower Niger. And I'm reading that passage through gritted teeth, because what we have here, of course, is a bitterly sardonic rendition in Achebe's voice of how Western historians talked about African culture as just something that needed to be pacified. And that's also a euphemism for violently suppressed and eliminated. But in a way, the word pacification is apt, because Okonkwo, through his premature murder of the messengers, again averting the war of blame, he did pacify the tribe for that moment, despite his intentions otherwise. So there is irony upon irony at the end of Things Fall Apart. And I think that's what makes it such a powerful novel. Thanks for listening.